The Synoptic Gospels. What are they? Why are they called the Synoptic Gospels? The Synoptic Gospels comprise of the first three books in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. John is not a part of the Synoptic Gospels. But why is the book of John not considered a part of the Synoptic Gospels? Well, we will discuss that later in this presentation. For now, let's start by looking at the word synoptic and its Greek meaning. Synoptic in Greek means seen together or with the same eye. The Synoptic Gospels share many of the same stories. Some of their contents are in the same order, while others share a similar meaning. This arrangement of the Synoptic Gospels brought about a debated issue called the Synoptic problem. This problem calls attention to the literary relationship between the Gospels with respect to their chronological order in which they were written, which writer borrowed from whom, and what sources were used. Several criticisms are used to better understand the synoptic problem, such as source criticism, form criticism, redaction criticism, and literary criticism. Source criticism addresses the interrelationships between Matthew, Mark, and Luke, along with the source theory used, which speaks to how all three books utilize or borrow material from one another. Form criticism speaks of the origin and setting of individual pericopes or texts through the identification of oral traditions used in writings. Redaction criticism is a means of understanding what the evangelist is trying to convey within each respective gospel. Literary criticism communicates how to analyze the Gospels through their plot, theme, and etc. But what do the Gospels represent? Each Gospel constitutes the writer's message and is specific to the audience at that time. For instance, the book of Matthew was written about the life of Christ from his account to the Jews. This is important because what Matthew does is make the connection of the Old Testament to Jesus by way of genealogy and establishing the relationship between Old Testament prophecies by way of son of David and mention of son of Abraham to the New Testament in Jesus, considered the King of Israel. The Gospel of Matthew references the Old Testament more than the other Gospels, focusing on Jesus' role as the Messiah. The book of Mark was written with the Romans in mind, being the shortest book of the Synoptic Gospels and considered straight to the point. His writing spoke to the intellect of Roman understanding, introducing a Jesus whose works stimulated their hearts through his very own works. Mark speaks of Jesus as a suffering servant and Son of God. The Gospel of Luke corresponded with the Greeks. His style was akin to classical Greek writing and is also the longest of the four Gospels, presenting Jesus as the friend of humanity or humane Savior. This is represented in the parables that are only found in his book and not shared in the other Gospels. The Gospel of John is viewed as a persuasive gospel, emphasizing Jesus' divine nature. This is evident in how this gospel begins telling the story of the divine one who became flesh, lived among us, and died so that we may have everlasting life. But are they reliable? The reliability of the Gospels is enveloped in historical significance. For instance, the book of Mark has been dated 55 to 70 AD. The overlap and similarities shared between Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John lend credence to their authenticity by eyewitness testimony within the first century, such as a historical account of the destruction of the Jerusalem temple by the Romans in 70 AD. Why is the Gospel of John not synoptic? The Gospel of John is different from Matthew, Mark, and Luke in several ways. to include its audience, which was written for all men, and the style chosen in writing, beginning from the beginning, a clear reference to Genesis. The plot and how John reveals his view of Jesus' works and deeds does not share the same unfolding as in the previous Gospels. However, there are some similarities between them. The story is the same: Israel's Messiah as made known by John the Baptist. Events, such as the feeding of the 5,000 or Jesus walking on water, and sayings that are shared, such as the rebuilding of the temple in 3 days and predictions of betrayal, to name a few. The Synoptic Gospels, along with the Gospel of John, provides us with insightful information into the life of Jesus and his ministry. The Gospels yield compatible perspectives that allow us as 21st century believers a holistic and unique view into who Jesus is. Thank you.